Okay, so have you seen this headline? It's really something else. The U.S. deporting people, but not to their home countries, to Kosovo,
Yeah.
a small country in Europe.
Yeah, I saw that. It's definitely, well, it turns the whole idea of deportation kind of on its head, doesn't it?
It really does, and that's exactly what we're digging into in this deep dive, this pretty unusual agreement between the United States and Kosovo, all about deportation and, well, immigration enforcement.
Mm-hmm. And we've got some reporting here that lays out the specifics of this deal.
Right. So our mission today really is to unpack it. What exactly is this agreement? Who does it involve? Why now? And, what does it signal about the very complicated world of migration and diplomacy these days?
Definitely. There's a lot layered in there.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So the core of it, based on the reporting, seems to be Kosovo agreeing to play a very specific part for the U.S.
That's right. Kosovo, often called Europe's youngest country, a very strong U.S. ally. They've agreed to temporarily host people, a limited number, mind you, who've been deported from the U.S.
And here's the really key detail, the thing that makes it so, unique. These aren't Kosovar citizens being sent back home.
Exactly. That's crucial. The agreement covers 50 individuals who are not from Kosovo at all. Their embassy in the U.S. confirmed they're willing to cooperate, but, and this is important, they set specific conditions.
Yeah, the language used is temporarily relocated. That seems deliberate.
It does.
With the stated goal being that Kosovo officials will help facilitate their safe return to their home country. So it's not permanent settlement.
No, definitely not. More like using Kosovo as an intermediary point, a stopover.
A waypoint.
And what's really interesting is how this specific deal, this Kosovo agreement, fits into a much bigger picture. The source material makes it clear this is just the latest move in a broader and pretty aggressive push by the U.S. government.
A push to get other countries, third countries, to accept migrants who aren't even their own citizens. Is that right?
That's the strategy, yeah.
So the why behind needing a country like Kosovo, it seems tied to problems deporting people directly back home, like maybe the home country won't take them or diplomatic relations are strained, that kind of thing.
Precisely. That's often when this strategy comes into play. And Kosovo's willingness seems, deeply connected to its relationship with the U.S. They see the U.S. as a really key ally. And they've actually done something similar before, haven't they?
Oh, right. The reporting mentioned that. In 2021, with Afghan evacuees.
Exactly. They agreed to temporarily host Afghans who needed more vetting before potentially going to the U.S. or elsewhere. Shows a pattern of cooperation.
But it sounds like it's not just, send us anyone. Kosovo has rules about who they'll accept in this case.
Yes, and that's a really significant part of this agreement.
Yeah.
The embassy specifically said the government in Pristina wants, the opportunity to select individuals from a proposed pool,
Oh, okay.
provided they meet specific criteria related to the rule of law and public order.
So even a close ally isn't just rubber stamping this. They have their own screening, their own concerns about who comes in. Makes sense.
Absolutely. It highlights they have their own process.
And the U.S. State Department response. They welcomed it.
They did. The reporting says they called it a key Trump administration priority. Interesting phrasing there. And thanked Kosovo for facilitating it.
Okay, so stepping back,
Mm-hmm.
you said this fits a pattern. Where else has the U.S. tried this third country approach?
Well, this deal for 50 people in Kosovo, it's just one piece. The sources mention the administration has deported hundreds before. People from Asian and African countries sent for temporary stays in places like Costa Rica and Panama.
Right, I remember reading about that. And there's a more maybe forceful example cited too, with Venezuelans.
Yes, that one stood out, sending over 200 Venezuelans accused by the U.S. of having gang ties to El Salvador. And the report suggests they were then imprisoned there in a very large facility.
Wow. And they've even tried to send people to places facing serious instability, like Libya.
Apparently so. Libya and South Sudan were mentioned. But those specific attempts were reportedly stopped by U.S. courts.
Okay, so this Kosovo deal, while it's a relatively small number, 50 people, it's definitely not happening in a vacuum. It feels like a very deliberate tactic, part of a much bigger global strategy for managing deportations when the direct route home is blocked.
I think that's exactly right. It really shows the extent the U.S. is leveraging its diplomatic ties,
Hmm.
relying on allies to navigate these really complex removal situations, especially, when direct returns just aren't working out for whatever reason. It shows how foreign policy and domestic immigration policy can really intertwine.
Yeah, and it also shows, like you said, that even close allies like Kosovo push back a bit or at least set conditions. That requirement they have to screen people based on rule of law, public order, it's not just paperwork. It underscores they need to manage risks, maintain control over who enters, even if it's temporary.
It also brings up a really interesting point about the idea of home, doesn't it? When you can't send someone back to their country of citizenship, these third country deals basically create a kind of temporary, almost artificial home, or maybe a waypoint, as you called it, in a country that has no connection to the person other than its relationship with the U.S.
That's a really complex layer on top of an already challenging process, international migration and enforcement.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is how this strategy, while it might solve an immediate deportation problem for the U.S., it really relies heavily on the goodwill and the capacity of other nations, nations that naturally have their own interests, their own conditions.
So what does this all mean then? Let's recap. We've got this specific Kosovo agreement. Temporary arrangement, 50 non-Kosovar deportees from the U.S. Goal is eventual onward travel to their actual home countries.
And it's clearly a piece of that bigger ongoing U.S. strategy. Find third countries when home countries won't take deportees back. We see this strategy playing out elsewhere, too, sometimes with more controversy, sometimes less.
And what really stands out here is how allies like Kosovo step up, likely because they value that U.S. relationship. But crucially, they do it on their own terms. They insist on selecting who comes based on their own criteria.
Right. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really does raise a significant question, doesn't it? When deporting someone home to their country of citizenship isn't possible, and the solution becomes sending them temporarily to a third country like Kosovo, a country they have zero ties to except through U.S. diplomacy. What does that fundamentally tell us about the future? About concepts like nationalities, sovereignty, and how we manage global migration?
That is definitely something to think about.